our colleges and campuses. Welcome back home. Can we just take this time to celebrate community and just say this with a genuine heart? I am thankful to worship with you today. Right? It is Thanksgiving Sunday. We ought to be thankful to worship together. I'm scared to keep this open because I'm going to spill it. But if I close it and open it, it's just going to make that fizzling noise. That psst. But we'll see what happens. But anyways, welcome. Welcome to Thanksgiving Sunday again. We're not going to go through Acts. I know, sad, sad. James Park's like, cool, right? But Thanksgiving Sunday, we're gonna kind of go over Thanksgiving stuff. Why you should be thankful. What's the purpose of Thanksgiving? And you're like, wow, Pastor Bobby, I feel like I heard this message 1,000 times. You probably did, but you're still not thankful, so you hear it again, right? So what's gonna happen? I know I was thinking about. I was like, I had a hard time this week trying to break down the passage today because the weird part of my soul just wanted to go through all of Psalm 107, which is like 41 verses. But something in my heart, and I think the Spirit was telling me is, hey, why don't you slow down? Like you don't have to get through the Bible. The Bible will get through itself, right? So I decided instead of going through the entire Psalm today, I'm gonna break it up into a 4-week sermon. So instead of like, we're gonna just learn about Thanksgiving today, we're gonna spend a season of learning how to be thankful, because that's more important than just having a reminder, but to learn and what that looks like. Right? So, if you want to study this further on your own, you could read Psalm 107 on, by yourself or whatever. But today we're going to read Psalm 107, verses 1 through 9. And we're going to take a pause on Acts because it's a good time, because we're going to start Paul's second mission trip. And it's a good time to stop because it's a good narrative to pause. But for the next 4 weeks or so, right, maybe 5, but I want to try to shoot for 4. We're going to go on a series of Thanksgiving, right, and what that looks like, right. But yeah, Psalm 107 verses 1 through 9. And it's a very beautiful psalm. In fact, if you hear these words, you're going to be very reminded of a praise that we sing quite often. And you might hear like Chris Tomlin's voice in it, right? But let's read this together. I'll read the first verse, you guys read the second, and we'll just ping pong back and forth, okay? Psalm 107 verses 1. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Those he gathered from the lands, from east and the west, from the north and the south. They were hungry and thirsty, and their lives were ebbed away. He led them by a straight way to a city where they could settle. For he satisfied the thirsty and fills the hungry with good things. Amen. This is the word of God. All right. And you're like, wow, Pastor Fabi, were you hungry when you picked this passage? No, I wasn't hungry, and I wasn't thinking about Thanksgiving food. But yes, the Lord will satisfy the thirsty and the hungry this Thursday at Pastor Fabi's place. Come by 7:30 if you guys want to join. But anyways, 7 p.m. But we're going to continue this, and this is very interesting because you sit down, and if you kind of realize a lot of the Psalms and a lot of the Bible and a big part of biblical, narrative and just text has a lot to do with Thanksgiving, isn't it? You read a bunch of Psalms, give thanks to the Lord, give thanks to the Lord, give thanks to the Lord. Oh, be thankful. Even it says in one of our famous New Testament passage, be thankful always in every circumstances, right? But the reality is that's kind of hard, especially if you're going through, a really tough season in your life. So today we're going to go over a little bit what it looks like to be thankful. And this is kind of interesting because one thing I've kind of realized in talking to people, a lot of people, because I interact with people every day, patients and, you guys and youth kids. And I ask this one question: how are you doing? Very simple, but it's a very deep question, right? How are you doing? And then this is the most popular answer I've been getting this week. It's been mid. And I'm like, okay, right? But most of the answers, oh, it's mid. Okay, now that's a slang that I had to kind of Urban Dictionary and ask other people around. But if you guys don't know what that means, and if you're old as me, right, and you don't keep up with slang, mid means okay, mediocre. If not, it means below that, I think. But it's whatever, right? And that's how we usually reply. If anything, we say it's good, but really intending that it's not that great. Grammar and English is difficult, right? But that's what it is. Right? And we talk about our days, and we talk about how our weeks are going. And one thing I hear a lot throughout is actually a lot more complaint and grumbling. Now you might fall into this category. Don't worry, I'm not trying to guilt you. I too am, right? When someone asks, Pastor Fabi, how's your week? I go, oh, I don't want to go to work today. Not on Sunday. I want to go on Sunday, right? But Monday to Friday, I don't want to go to work, right? But that's what it is, right? We have more complaints and more grumbling. You talk to a student, oh, I have a midterm, I have a final, I have, labs, clinicals, internship, and, more complaints. Begrudgingly. So what do we do? Right? How do we switch that attitude and that personality? Because I'm not going to just be like, be grateful, goodbye, because that's not going to do anything. In fact, I think it's been since the beginning of time that people have been grumbling. I think that's why Adam and Eve, sinned, and that's what happened in the flood and everything else, right? Throughout history, people complain. We see the Israelites grumbling, even after they were delivered from slavery. Right? It's within ourselves, in our sinful place, to not learn how to be thankful or to be in a place of grumbling and complaining. So this is what I'm going to say, and this is what I'm going to propose. Right? And this is actually very interesting, right? Because whoever wrote this psalm, he understood the human condition. He understood the human heart. And what he wrote is that, oh, you guys don't know how to be thankful. Right? Ultimately, he says, be thankful. Give thanks. Give thanks. Right? That's the first premise he writes. Give thanks. And now it's not just to anything. Give thanks to the Lord. Why? For he is good. Why? For his love endures forever. Right? That's the premise that he sits by. You give thanks, not because your life is going well and dandy and good and, there's always, sunflowers and sunshines and butterflies. No, that's not the reason why you give thanks. You give thanks beyond your circumstances into what? For who God is and what God has done. For he is good and his love endures forever. That's the reason we ought to give thanks, church. It's not what God has given you. It's not because you got accepted to the job you wanted or the college you wanted to. That's not the reason. That's out of his goodness, but that's not the reason why we give thanks. We give thanks because he is God. He is God. Right, so we're going to sit down, and that's our central truth today. Not just to give thanks because that's kind of a given, but God's goodness endures forever. We give thanks. Why? Because God's goodness endures forever. Forever, ever, 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 right? Like diamonds last forever, right? Forever. That's what it is. His love endures forever. His goodness endures forever. So we're going to go over three things, right? And my favorite W's. What, who, and why. Where's where? We don't know, right? So what does it mean to give thanks? Who should give thanks? And why we ought to give thanks or why we should give thanks? So the first thing is, what does it mean to give thanks? Because that's the first thing he says, right? Besides the verb to give. But he says, thanks, give thanks. If you ever thought about it, and, I think I want to be a deep thinker, but I'm really not. Right? So when I was in college, there was a moment in my life where I was questioning everything I was doing. And someone said thanks to me. Right? A roommate of mine. No, sorry. Something else happened. Right? A roommate of mine said, I'm sorry when I did a chore for him. He was super Korean. He's like, "Oh, 형, 미안해," you know. He said, "I'm sorry." And then I said this to him. I said, "Don't be sorry. Say thank you." Right? Don't be sorry. Say thank you. Be thankful. Right? Because when you say sorry, like I couldn't do it, it puts a lot of burden on you. Right? The focus is on you. I couldn't do what you expected me to do, or I needed your help, or whatever. But when you say thank you, you're acknowledging someone or something that has done something for you. Right? And when we say thank you, right? And I had to think about this. What does this word thank you mean? It's actually a beautiful thing because it actually means to confess. You're confessing something. Right? Right? To give thanks is to confess, and that is our first point today. When we say thank you, right, it's for us to understand and acknowledge what the person is doing and has done and will be. Right? It isn't because they convenienced your life and it's because of manners. Oh, say thank you. Okay, mom, I'll say thank you. It's because you're acknowledging what X person is doing to you and what X has done for you. Right? That's the beauty of giving thanks, is you're confessing something. You're professing something and an action being done towards you. Right? That's the beauty of things. Right? You know, I've been into a few marriage counseling, and I had a few marriage counseling classes at seminary. And my professor, you know, she's brilliant, right? She's been married for like, I don't know, like a few decades, and she had a few kids. And she said, "Do you want to know the secret to marriage?" And everyone's like, "Yes, of course. Why not?" You know. And she said this: say sorry, say thank you, and say I love you. And I said, cool, I knew that, right? But that's the secret for a happy marriage. And do I do that? Sometimes. I try to. You could ask my wife, right? But I say I'm sorry, say thank you, and say I love you. But you see, it's the things that you have to do it. It's a verb that you go and do. When you say sorry, you're acknowledging. When you say thank you, you're acknowledging. And when you say I love you, you're acknowledging. All these things are a confession of the soul. And the beautiful part about giving thanks is the confession of the soul, that you're utterly grateful and your gratitude is towards them. Right? When you say give thanks to the Lord, now that's the question what we have to ask. If you give thanks to the Lord, what are you really giving thanks for? Have you sat down and thought about that, church? Because that's the question I want to pose to you today. If saying thank you, and what it means to say thank you is to confess something, right? To confess your gratitude, or to confess, you know, where you are in relationship to said person, right? Then what are you giving thanks to? Why are you saying it? What is your relation for you and God for you to be thankful for? See, sit down and think about this. Right? Sit down and ponder upon what this really means. Because that's what it is. If when you say thank you and when you confess something, it is in a place of relationship. Right? It's in a place of relationship. And that's a beautiful part. Right? To give thanks is to confess. Right? So now what we're going to ask is this: who should give thanks? Who should give thanks? And we're going to write, oh, everyone, Pastor Fabi. Of course, everyone, right? Like that's not, you know, everyone should be thankful. But what does the Bible teach us? Right? And this is actually one of most of the beautiful parts. He says this. Right? The first part, we're going to read verses 1 and 2. Right, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story, those he redeemed from the land of the foes. Right, verse 3, let's even go further. Those he gathered from the land, from the east and the west, and from the north and the south. Right, who should give thanks? Right, the first point is this: those who have been redeemed, like a coupon, redeemed. Right? You're like, okay, well, that's cool. Those who have been redeemed. Church, do you know what this word means? It's actually a very beautiful word that we like in the modern English dictionary, we have no comprehension to this. But the Hebrew dictionary is called goel. Right? Goel. And then and the redeemer means goelim. Right? And we hear this one passage in Ruth where Boaz is the kinsman redeemer. Right? What does it mean to be redeemed? And this is, and I had to study this because it, we have no idea what this is because in our society, we lack forgiveness. We lack debt cancellation. But this is what it means, right? For someone to be redeemed, it is actually very, it works in ancient culture, but it doesn't work for ours because we don't understand this. But in ancient culture, what happens if, let's say you owe someone money. You owe someone money and you can't pay it back. So you know what happens to a person at ancient times if you cannot pay someone back? You become a slave. That's it. There's no second chances. Oh, you can't give me my copper coin. You're my slave now. Pow, right? That's what happens. You become someone's slave. But there is this person that comes who is a part of your family, and he says, "No, I will pay his debt." Right? I will pay his debt. So that's what happens financially. Right? Now another sense of this, it becomes when there's an old lady and her husband just dies and she has no kids. Right? Remember, back then there's no status for a woman. So what does she do? She can't make money. So someone in her family says, "I will redeem you. You will be part of my family. I will take care of you." Right? To be redeemed is for someone else to come and to save you out of a horrible situation. Right? That's what it means to be redeemed. Now, let me share this example with you. Now, I think all of us, if not a very few people that cannot relate to this, but we all have student debt. And if you go to USC, you probably have a lot more than others, right? And if you're going to USC, good luck, right? But we all have debt, right? If it's not student loans, then it's credit card. And if it's not credit card, you're in debt to someone. I hope not. But that's kind of the way it works, right? So let's say you owe $100,000 just on one credit card, and you're thinking about, wow, that's a huge credit line. But anyways, you're thinking you own this much money, right? And then you get a bank. And I don't know why this always comes up to me, but when I was a kid, sorry, I'm going off tangent, but when I was a kid, I would watch K-drama with my mom. And then there would be these scenes, if you're young enough, you probably know, where like this rich family lose all their money, and all these people in suits come and take their TVs and put stickers on everything. And then they're like, you see the harmony crying, "Oh, Momona," and then she has a heart attack or something, right? I don't know why, but that's kind of like, you think about that. Imagine that, right? You have all this debt, and someone says, "I'm going to go and I'm going to take all your belonging if you don't pay this back to me." Right? In our modern day, what we could do is declare bankruptcy. I declare bankruptcy, right? But now, right, here, right, now let's say you have not just, 100,000, 500,000, $1 million worth of debt. Money that we can't even fathom, especially here, everyone in this room. Right? Unless you're a millionaire, right? But none of us. Let's say I, Pastor Fabi, somehow I am rich in this scenario, go up to you and says, "Hey man, don't worry. I'll pay all your debt for you. All your student loans, all your credit card debt." I'm projecting, by the way, right? All your student loan, all your credit card debt, I guess all your gambling debt too, if you have any, right? I got you. Don't worry. They could take my stuff. It doesn't matter. I'll find a way to pay. Right? Now, it depends on the size of your debt, how grateful you'll be, right? If you were like down a cent, a penny, you'll be like, "Oh, thanks, Bobby. Thanks for, fronting this." But if you were $1 million in debt and I paid for all of that, you'd be eternally grateful, wouldn't you? In fact, you'd be indebted to me. That if I walk into the room, you would greet me first. Wouldn't you? Even because you would, not because I paid for it, not because I'm rich, because you would have this founded love and respect. You would be in awe. You would give thanks. Right? To give thanks here in this word in Psalms 107, verse 1, it means to praise. Right? To praise, to give thanks. Other Hebrew translation says this: to throw yourself at, to worship. Worship the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. for the redeemed, for those he has claimed and purchased, for those he has brought into the home. Right? We think about this financially, but imagine it is socially too. When you are about to go bankrupt, be homeless, he says, no, come into my house, I'll take care of you. See, that's what it means to be redeemed, where God says, I am yours and you are mine. You have nothing to offer me, but I have everything of you. Right? All that I am is yours. Right? For those who are redeemed of the Lord, those who are redeemed of the Lord, tell the story. Tell the story. See, church, and this is another question I have to ask. Have you lost the joy of your salvation for you to forget to be thankful to God? Maybe the reason why we fail to be thankful is because we don't understand what he has redeemed us from. When was the last time you woke up and thought, man, God really saved me from hell? Man, God really saved me from my sins and my addiction and my failings. No, we're quick to say sorry when we sin, aren't we? Oh, God, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have watched that. I shouldn't have, touched around with this thing. Oh, God, I'm sorry. Oh, but have you said thank you for forgiving me? Thank you for bringing me out of this place, out of this pit. Thank you for redeeming me when I was totally indebted to this and enslaved to this. You have purchased my soul. Have you, church, brothers and sisters, have lost the spirit of your redemption? Quite too often, and very too often, in fact, believers lose the joy of their salvation. Quite too often, believers lose the sight of their hearts being redeemed by the Lord. So how do we fix this? It's actually very interesting. Let the redeemed tell their story. When was the last time you shared how grateful you are that God has saved you from this place? See, this is how we do it actively. This is how we do it actively. When we share about God's goodness and God's love to one another, we share that thankfulness with one another. Right? Who should give thanks? Those who are redeemed. Church, is that your identity? Then give thanks. Oh, give thanks with all your heart. Right? Because it is in his goodness he has redeemed you. Next, who else should give thanks? Those who are lost and weary. Right? Those who are lost and weary. I'm going to read this continuously in verse 5 all the way to verse 9. They were hungry and thirsty, and their lives ebbed away. Then they cried out to the Lord in all their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He led them by a straight way to the city they could settle. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for mankind, for he satisfies the thirsty and fills the hungry with good things. Who else should give thanks? For those who are lost and weary. See, Psalm 107 was actually thought to be written and sung for sojourners who are trying to make their way back into the holy city to worship. And if you live in ancient times, you don't have GPS. You kind of look at the stars and Moana your way there, right? Usually, or you find a good navigator with a camel and says, "Get on this camel hump," right? I don't know. That's what I'm assuming they do, right? But you see this, right? They go from a long journey and they could lose their way. I don't know if you ever got lost in your life, but it's a scary thing. It's terrifying. If you know there's one thing about Pastor Fabi, I share four things about me, and one of them is that I walked to Santa Barbara. And if you're a long friend of mine, you're like chuckling because that's my favorite story. And at that time, I chose not to use my smartphone. I had a slide phone with text messages, and I only did that. Right? I took a wrong turn somewhere. It's weird because you just had to go up north, but I took a wrong turn somewhere, and I got lost. And I was like thinking, a lot of things happen to my, what if I don't eat? What if I get lost? What if I die here? And I remember if you just head west, you hit the beach, So, that's what I did. But the idea of being lost, the idea of being weary is taxing. isn't it? To be a wanderer. Right? If you've ever been lost, you know that it's a very hopeless feeling in a sense. Now, I'm not just talking about directionally. For those who are lost in your career path, do I really want to do this? For those who are lost in life, for those who have been just hopping around from city to city, from town to town, from career to career, from relationship to relationship, from church to church, you feel lost and you don't know what to do. Right? What happens? You get tired, don't you? Oh, I've been going for this for way too long. I just want to give up. I just want to stay at home. Right? Let me encourage you with this. Those who are led by the Lord, it is He, right? In verse 7, He leads them by a straight way to a city where they could settle. Right? But it happens in this, right? But it happens only when verse 6 happens, right? Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and He delivered them from their distress. Right? Those who are lost, those who are weary, those who are hungry, those who are searching and never satisfied, when you cry out to the Lord, it is He who answers and He who listens. Right? And this is something beautiful. And you learn a lot about this in your life and in your relationship. You know someone loves you deeply when they're willing to listen to you. That's just like a life golden rule, isn't it? Right? You learn that someone loves you when someone is willing to sit down and listen to you. Especially when you're in distress, especially when you're trying to cry out, instead of trying to, give you advice or say things or, try to be in a different place, right? They sit down and listen to you. Right? And this is what happens when we cry out, right? Verse 6, then they cry out to the Lord in all their troubles. And He delivered them from distress. He led them by a straight way to a city where they could settle. Verse 8, what happens when God does that? Let them give thanks for the Lord. Let them give thanks to the Lord for His unfailing love and His wonderful deeds for mankind. For He satisfies the thirsty and fills the hungry with good things. Don't you see, church? For the believer who cries out to the Lord, you are never lost. Never, ever lost. But it requires a lot of humility to cry out. Just like it takes a lot of boldness to confess anything, even to confess a thank you. Right? So this is an encouragement for those who are lost in any area, in any season of your life. Right? Do you trust in the goodness of God? Ultimately, that's what it is, right? And our sermon really comes to this. Right? It all sums up to this, right? Why do we give thanks? Right? It's not because God is God and you are man and, I want to give thanks. If not, then He's going to, smite me. That's not the reason why you give thanks. Right? The reason why we give thanks is because His love endures forever. Right? That's the reason why we give thanks, right? And that's our third point, right? We give thanks because God's love endures forever. And if you read this psalm, it's the most beautiful psalm that we could ever read. And I'm going to say that about a lot of psalms. But we read this, and the most beautiful part about this is this. God's love endures forever is a very interesting word, right? But it says, but the better translation is eternity. Right? Forever, we think about post-life. Right? Eternity is from beginning to infinity. Right? It means past, present, and future. That God's love endures forever, for all eternity, right? Because we read this, right? Let those who are redeemed. What does it mean to be redeemed? Right? That's already a past tense word. Right? God has already purchased you and bought you. Right? Those are who give thanks. Right? It's a past action. Some wandered in the desert, wasteland, finding their way to the city where they could settle. They were hungry and thirsty. Their lives ebbed away. Right? This is a present verb. These are present tense. Things are happening now, in a sense. You see, we read this and we understand that his love endures not just at your current situation and circumstances, right? But past, present, and future. Right? Church, there's something I really want to share with you because this is what we forget. We forget that we think oftentimes that God's love is actually just very present. Oh, and if I don't feel it now, I don't feel it now. Or bad things are happening to me this week, therefore God is not here. No, 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 don't you see? God's love happens through and through and throughout. Past, present, and future. God's love is constant and consistent, and his goodness never fails. And church, this is something that we have to understand as Christians and be reminded of this daily because we forget this often. In fact, we're going to forget this tomorrow morning. You're going to wake up and, your parents are going to nag at you. Why are you sleeping so late? And you're going to be like, leave me alone. And if that's too relatable, then, I'm sorry. Right? But that's what it's going to be. Right? The reality is we need to be reminded of God's goodness lasting for all eternity, forever, right? It's lasting today, it lasted in the present, and it will last all the way for all eternity. And that's something, church, you have to wrap your head around. You have to let that consume your soul because that's the hope that we have as Christians and believers. Right? It's that his love endures forever. When you're lost, it's not that God has left you. When you're hungry and weary, it's not that God has left you. Right? When you feel like you're not redeemed, it's not that God has abandoned you. No, 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 no. Church, never believe that lie ever. But in those seasons, our time and place is to cry. Our time and place is to cry out. For there's a beautiful thing about a God who listens to you. There's a beautiful thing that there's someone who has the authority to do everything in the universe, and he says, I'm here to listen. And if he doesn't give you what you want, good. He'll give you himself. That's infinitely better. Right? But give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love. Right? Verse 8, and his wonderful deeds for mankind. For he satisfies the thirsty and fills the hungry with good things. Church, do you believe this? Is this the action that you want to take moving forward? Let them give thanks. Let them confess. Let them praise. Let them acknowledge. Let them throw themselves to a God whose love endures forever. Church, my prayer for our ministry and for every single person who is in this ministry is to have a spirit of thanksgiving. And that's not like turkey and mashed potato. That's the stomach of Thanksgiving, right? The spirit of thanksgiving is to know that God is good. That in your worst season, that his goodness has led you there and will pull you out. But not just that, what you have in all eternity is even better. Church, if there's one thing that I want to remind you of is this. You are redeemed. It is Christ's blood shed on the cross for you. It is Christ's love who saw us and says, no, I want them for eternity. In fact, let me redeem them. It is God who went out of his way to redeem us. And it's not just you personally, it's the person sitting next to you. It is your community. So be thankful. Church, let's pray.